Wow, and thank you everybody for staying. This is such a long day for for you to be here. I mean, it's really late in the evening, so I appreciate everybody being here, and I appreciate being in Istanbul, which is one of my favorite cities. I just landed literally a few minutes ago. And I'm here to talk to you about designing service experiences. We talk a lot about customer experience, but I do believe that when we design a customer experience, what we're really providing is a service. Before we get into service experiences, though, and because it's so late in the day, I thought I would take you, even though we're in a beautiful place, somewhere else. Why don't we go on a wonderful vacation? If, like me, you live in a place that has winter, right now in London, where I live at the moment, it's gray, it's raining, it's starting to get cold, and everybody dreams of a place like this. And when you want to go to a place like this, the thing that you do is to book. You start thinking about, how do I get there? I want to book travel. And when you book travel, you might think, well, the Maldives are in the Indian Ocean. Let me look at airlines that go in that area. So you might go on Emirates, for instance, and figure out, how can I go to my vacation destination? Now, Emirates has a website that looks like this. Right at the very top, it says destinations. You can scroll down, choose a region, and decide where to go. Maybe, though, you don't want to fly Emirates for whatever reason, so you might want to go to Virgin, because that's who you get points with, and we all know that we're all a bit crazy for points. Virgin does exactly the same thing. It tells you destination, Indian Ocean, Maldives. It's pretty easy. And then you figure out how much you want to spend, how many days you want to stay. Do you want to be in an overwater villa? Do you want to do snorkeling, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You build your experience right there. But because I live in England, and because I get points or miles or Avios with British Airways, I wanted to go on vacation, and I wanted to go see what British had to offer me. And this is what I get. I've not even decided where I want to go, and they're already asking me to pay for it. Will I want to buy this? But because I'm stubborn, I don't worry about paying for a holiday. I scroll a little further down the page, and what I see is this: already know where to go. Now, if you've ever booked a plane ticket with British Airways, you know that that thing that you see on the right hand of the screen is exactly what you do when you book a flight to Manchester. It's hardly exciting. It doesn't put me in the mood. It doesn't tell me that I'm going in holiday. It tells me that I want to compare, but I don't even know where I want to go. Eventually, when I get into the menu, and I expect that these are some of the things that you design every day. It may not be holidays. It could be appliances. It could be services for your government. It could be all sorts of things. Eventually, if I go down a menu or another menu, I am going to find holidays there in the fourth position. I can find the holiday finder. I have flights and destinations, et cetera, et cetera. Not the same thing. The really interesting thing is that this is what I see on a screen. This is what I see in 2D. This is what puts me or doesn't put me in the mood to go somewhere. But there is something a lot greater than this. There is what I experience afterward. And what I experience afterward doesn't just apply to something like a vacation, which is a luxury. It may apply to what my customers experience. I work in a bank, for instance. It might apply to what people that use government services, people that book electricity, people that go and buy a car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how many of you might have gotten upset when they use a website, when they use an app, when they try and do something online and they think that they're doing one thing and they get to do a completely different thing, or they think they want to open a bank account and then the process doesn't work. They have to call into the telephony call center or they have to walk into a branch. It is the equivalent if we were selling a holiday and you bought your holiday and you get your ticket and you get the thing in your email and then we're like, you bought the holiday, but now, wait a second. You need to call this number that I'm giving to you, go through the phone tree, and talk to the seating department. And so you call the seating department, and you're a little annoyed because, come on, I should be able to do this kind of thing online. And they say, okay, Alberta, your seat is 3A, you're good to go. You put down the phone, and you realize, wait a second, I'm vegetarian. Oh, yeah, you need to now call the catering department. And so they give you another phone number. And you call them and you say, I'm vegetarian and I'm lactose intolerant, and so I want this kind of meal. Okay, great, you do that, and you think you're done. And then you realize that you're getting married on this holiday, and so you might have a big piece of luggage because you want to put your wedding dress in there. And you think you've bought a complete package, but no, you got to call another phone number, and you got to talk to the luggage department. And the luggage department, they make you go again through the whole phone tree, and they make you go, they might send you to an online form because you want to insure the thing, et cetera, et cetera. If we were to do these kind of things that we get to put our users through every day, instead of having happy people that go on vacation, may get married, and may get a meal on the plane, we would have a lot of really angry customers. And I'm sure that this has been every one of you when you've had to deal with something that happens online, but has a service that doesn't happen, or that isn't only delivered online. Now, every company in the world is built on what I call intentional foundation, meaning someone, somewhere, had an idea of doing something. And the idea is not, I want to make the users of my service angry. The idea is, I want to send people on holiday. I want to sell custom cars. I want to provide an alternative to transportation problems in my city. I want people to be able to get their passports or book a room in a hotel. But these ideas never quite get delivered in the way that people expect. And part of that is because when we think about our organization, when you are looking for your next job, most of the time you see the word product. We think we're product organizations. We think we are product designers. We think we do a specific thing. And I argue that even companies that do make physical products, companies that make shoes, companies that make records, companies that make, that sell holidays, or companies like mine, banks, are not product organizations. The product is not that piece of plastic that you see on the screen right now. I don't know anybody that wakes up in the morning and says, oh my God, today is the day that I get my bank card in the mail. I don't know anybody that wakes up in the morning, opens the mail, and gets excited because they get a catalog. They get excited, you might get excited because getting that piece of plastic means that you can take your family on vacation. You can buy that engagement ring for the person that you care for. You might be able to provide for your family. And even that is not really about it. What it is about is the ability to demonstrate that you've grown, that you're successful, that you can provide, that you can take care of your loved ones. So are these product organizations that we're working? Is this product design that we talk about? Is it service organizations? Is that what we do? I think that it goes a little beyond that. I think that what we are, what we do, is being enablers of outcomes for people, where the outcome is almost never the thing that we make, but what that thing means in how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive our standing in society. And so if that is what we are, if we are enablers of outcomes, how do we go about driving those outcomes? If it's not the thing that we make, but the intention behind it, how might we do that? Now, we all know that every presentation at every conference has to have a Venn diagram. So this is your Venn diagram for the evening. But we also know that when the individual goal, my goal as a person to take my family on vacation, meets with the organizational goal, which is to sell me a vacation, and meets with the group goal or the team goal, which is to make sure that that vacation can happen, that is where the real value happens. If you think about the companies where you work, if you think about where or who you design the things that you do for, we talk about, you'll hear a lot about revenue. You're going to talk about cost efficiencies. You're going to talk about reducing the cost of doing something. But value is a completely different thing. It's a thing that works for me as a customer, works for the organization that sells me that service, and works for that team that has worked so hard to make that happen. However, that doesn't always happen. And the way we can explain how this doesn't always happen is using this mathematical model. I don't expect that very many are going to be familiar with this concept of local versus global optimum. When we think about driving value, when we think about innovating, when we think about designing the next car, the next banking product, the next holiday, the next pair of shoes, generally what we do is we take this idea that we have, this intention, and we look at what other people do. So in mathematics, this is what is called a local optimum. We try to find a solution to a problem looking at a set of neighboring solutions. And this is why you will hear we want to be the Uber of banking. We want to be the Amazon of fast food delivery. We want to be the Netflix of music streaming. It's because we know what we want to do, but we look for a solution among all those neighboring solutions. Real value, on the other hand, is unlocked when you look at the global optimum, meaning the best possible solution among all possible solutions. It's what in design we call thinking outside of the box. So Uber, global optimum of mobility, there wasn't anything quite like it. Everything that came after Uber that does exactly the same thing, not so much. They're in the local optimum. And it is the difference, effectively, between what we call, in our terms, optimization and innovation. Now, if you look at where you work, probably you do quite a bit of optimization. And optimization is fairly linear. It follows a process, and it can be divided in chunks. And this idea of process, I find fascinating. We take a thing, we decide that we want to get to a certain point that's in that set of neighboring solutions, and then we map out how we're going to do that. We design what we call a roadmap, and that's how we're going to create innovation in the space that we are. And I think what is interesting as a designer is the why. Why do we do that? Well, we do that because process can be measured. And when you can measure a thing, you can attach reward to that. So Reed Hastings, who was the founder of Netflix, actually expressed this very simply, saying that process brings you seductive near-term outcomes. And if you work in an organization, if you design things, if you work in an organization where outcomes are tied to rewards, bonuses, promotions, and all sorts of other perks, then of course you have no incentive in doing something that is completely different. Now, how does design fit in all of this? We don't go into organization to do process, to design little tiny tiny increments of the same thing. We go in because we have a great idea. We go in because we have craft. We go in because we're passionate about what we do. We've studied, we've put in the time, we might have taken a product that's niche, and we have this wonderful idea. And especially if we're just out of school, or if we join a firm that has an established way of doing things, we might be confronted with, guess what? A little more process. We tend to take design and represent it in a way that can make sense to us and that can make sense to our organization, can make sense to people that don't speak our language. Now, this is the Design Council Double Diamond. We all do or have done a version of this. If you've studied design at the university, you probably have seen this. And it's not that it's wrong. It talks, very simply about understanding what the problem is, understanding what the problem space is, and then think about what we might be able to do about it, and then deliver a thing that potentially works. Or you might have seen this. This is from Stanford, from the design school. They have 5 boxes instead of 4, but it's effectively exactly the same thing. And maybe you're lucky enough that you work with IDEO designers, or you work at IDEO yourselves, and you have another version of this. But effectively, what we're doing here is commoditizing design. And when we commoditize design, we stay firmly in that space of doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if you overlap this to what we know now is what every organization does, which is agile delivery, you get into this loop where these cycles get so compressed that what you do is incredibly tactical. The reality is that we, as designers, operate in a space that's completely different from when those diagrams were developed. Those diagrams are linear. They talk about a step that happens after another step, after another step. But the world that we operate in looks a little more like this. Now, I don't know if you've heard about this term VUCA. It's used by the US military to define situations that are volatile, so where there is change, there is unstable. And if you look around in society, if you look into the spaces that we move, everything is changing. And the variations are unexpected and they're very frequent. It's uncertain. We don't know what the ramifications of problems are. We don't know what ramifications of our design decisions are. It's ambiguous. There is not a clear understanding of what cause and effect. It was really easy when we were in the industrial era to talk about cause and effect. If I do this, then this will happen. Because there were so many fewer elements to a problem. And it's complex. Everything is connected. You know, it's not just connected objects, connected cars, but you change a thing in a system and you have no idea what the ramifications are. And so I think as designers, we need to be prepared to operate in a space that's completely different and that's no longer representable in a linear fashion. And when I think about the thing that we design and our role as designers in organizations, we need to be reliable to counteract volatility. So we need to follow through. When we make a promise to a user, we sell you a vacation, we need to follow through, sell them the whole thing, not sell them bits and bobs. When I'm selling you a bank account or a banking app or a foreign exchange or something like that, I need to be able to deliver just that, not just a beautiful screen. We need to be trustworthy with so many services, with so many products, with so many shoes. Which one do you choose? Are you going to choose the knockoff from China, or are you going to buy a pair of boots that are going to cost you a little more, but they're going to carry you through? Are you going to sign up with Monzo, or are you going to sign up with Starling? You don't know, you know, so you need to develop that relationship of trust, especially if you're developing something new. To counteract ambiguity, you need to be understandable. If you look at society, for instance, the people that use computers, the people that use banking apps, it's not just us. It's not just you. You guys grew up with the internet. But it's people like my father. It's people like your own parents that don't have that literacy and need to be able to understand exactly what it is that they're getting themselves into. And you need to be direct to cut through that complexity. When you have so many choices, when you have so many possible paths, if you're not transparent, if you're not direct, and if your products and services aren't the same, you're not going to be able to make much sense. Now, there is another thing. The work that we do, even if we make products, even if we design, is knowledge work. And knowledge work is a term that was coined by Peter Drucker. But what it means is that when we set out to do something, we have no idea what the outcome is going to be. And if we have no idea what the outcome is going to be, this is called non-determinism. How can you be able to represent that in a linear fashion? How are you going to be able to pivot the startup that you work in or the product that you work in on the back of information that you only get halfway through the process? But it gets more complicated than this. We operate in what are called big socio-technical systems. We're no longer on an assembly line where you have raw materials coming in, you have a thing that moves one step after another, and the only dependency you have is if my iron doesn't get here, I cannot be making rivets. And if I don't make rivets, they cannot build that bridge. We have so many moving parts in the technical systems, and we have so many people with completely different goals, agendas, stories, experiences. And these systems, because they're so complex, they're also non-deterministic. We know this room, for instance, is a system. But when I walked into this room, I didn't know what would happen. I knew that I was here to give a talk, but you guys might all stand up and leave and go somewhere else and completely change the dynamic of the system. And so if all these things are happening, this idea of designing in a linear way goes completely out the window. And a system is not just all the parts put together. A system is given by the product of their whole interactions. And so when you think about the work that you do, that interface that you're drawing, or maybe that button, or maybe that bit of the process, you need to think about all those other things that go with it.
Let's just take a simple example. I read in the New York Times recently that 457 different automobiles are available in the United States. Let's buy one of each and bring them into a large garage. Let's then hire 200 of the best automotive engineers in the world and ask them to determine which car has the best engine. Suppose they come back and say the Rolls-Royce has the best engine. You make a note of it. Which one has the best transmission, we ask them, and they go run tests and come back and say the Mercedes does. Which one has the best battery? Come back and say the Buick does. And one by one, for every part required for an automobile, they tell us which is the best one available. Now we take that list, give it back to them, and say remove those parts from those cars, put them together into the best possible automobile. Because now we'll have an automobile consisting of all the best parts. What do we get? You don't even get an automobile, for the obvious reason that the parts don't fit. The performance of a system depends on how the parts fit, not how they act taken separately.
So, if the parts don't fit, it doesn't matter if they're the best ones, you don't have an automobile, you don't have a car. And that is something that I apply every day in my design practice. When I have the designers on my team working on a screen, working on a new banking platform, working on a new way to give mortgages, if all those parts don't fit with the rest of the organization that's going to provide the service, it's not gonna matter. It's all work that we throw down the window. And this is why one of the things that in the practices I work in, service design becomes absolutely fundamental because it connects not just the beautiful things that we make, the things that we call products. It doesn't just connect what the users see, but it also connects what we need to have in place so that that experience is going to be experience of the whole service and not just a beautiful screen or a beautiful thing that I hear over the phone that doesn't work with the rest. And it's only when we put all of it together and we make sure that it fits that I believe we're doing our work as designers. So in a way, what I would like you to take from this is that when we design, we also need to redesign design itself, the way we work. And I want to show you how we do it. Now, this screen that you see in the back are not real screen from our apps. The internet is a wonderful thing. These are people that do mocks and that put them on the internet. But I think that, in a way, it's representative of what we today believe is design and what I don't believe is design. It's not just this. For me, design that works looks a lot more like this. Now, this is an actual photo with actual people from my team into the bank, inside the bank in the United Kingdom. And what we were redesigning here is the whole mortgage process application. Now, you don't see any screen. You don't see any piece of code on here. What you do see, though, is these three gentlemen, one 2 and 3 are mortgage advisors. They're the people that when you want to buy a house and you need money, you're going to talk to. And all the other people are people that answer the phone. They're people that do risk and credit decisioning. They're the people that actually are way below in this diagram over here. They would sit around here. What you also see is how all the parts fit together. So how the work flows through our organization and how it is measured. And it's only by putting all these things together with the design, of course. There are screens on the other side of the room. It's only when we put all of it together that the service can manifest itself. It's only then that the product you design, that interface you design, does what it's supposed to do. And so we are redesigning the way that we do design, and we're encouraging, and we go out and teach people how to do these kind of things, because this is what works. This is what makes the difference. But we're not just redesigning design, we're also redesigning the organization. That means that our role is not just to sit at a table or sit at a computer and get out what is in our head, what we have learned in school, but it's to take other people along with us on that journey. And the way we do that is by helping people see what happens when we make a decision. And so the way we communicate shows what we know, what we have learned from talking to customers, to colleagues, to competitors, but also how it affects everything else in that blueprint, in that service stack that you have seen. And it's not hard, it's not easy. It's something that when you come out of design school and you really want to put in practice all those things that you've learned, feels a little weird. This is not what I went to school with. But I would argue that as our environments change tremendously, this is the way that we can get ahead. This is the way that we really change the game. For, remember that Venn diagram? The organization, the individuals, and the teams that you're a part of. So, if there is something that I would like you to take away with you, is that, of course, I mean, process is important. We need to know how to do things, but it's not the end-all and be-all. That you need to understand what needs are. We talk a lot about, doing research and understanding what the needs are. But if those needs of our users and our customers, the customers are the ones that buy our products and services, don't match the need of our stakeholders, the need of our business to unlock value and not just increase revenue or reduce costs, we're making a huge mistake. We're missing a tremendous opportunity. We need to study the system. We need to understand how the thing that we're doing fits in the greater scheme of things. It doesn't matter if we design, if we win an award for design, if that design then cannot be delivered in a meaningful way to the people that need it. We need to embrace the constraints. We don't all work in startups. A lot of us work in regulated environments. You might be working in government, you might be working in finance, you might be working in healthcare, or the organization you're a part of might not have an unlimited budget. You might live in a country where certain things aren't available. It doesn't matter. You need to, that's where you really go into that global optimum. That's really when the box is really narrow around you, where you have an opportunity to go outside of it mentally and do different things. And you need to consider the full service stack. Forget about the entirety of just the surface layer. Think about how that surface layer relates to everything that sits underneath it. But the most important things is one. If there is just one thing that you do when you go back to work on Monday, is this: make sure that every decision you make is made with full awareness of the consequences. Make sure that if you change a system, if you change a screen, you know what is going to happen somewhere else. If you don't do that, nothing else matters. Thank you.